What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Méran podcast. Today, my guest is Paul Bergeron, aka B. Paul. Paul is an ex-pro skier turned filmmaker who has had a lot of success both in front and behind the lens. We talked about his youth, becoming a pro skier, and his travels around the world working on many projects. We also talked about the multiple injuries he had during his career and also his recent switch to filmmaking in the past couple of years. It was a really good talk with Paul, and we ended up talking for so long that I had to split it in two parts. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Paul, what's up?
What's up, Xavier?
Not much.
It's been a while, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, same. I think we haven't talked in, 8 years? 9 years? 8?
Yeah, I don't even think we've even talked that much in our whole life.
Yeah.
Maybe for an hour or so total, but not so much. But glad to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on.
Yes.
In this amazing studio that is in my office.
Yeah, it is a nice studio.
Yeah, what's been up with you lately? What are you up to these days?
As some people may know, I used to ski and live in Quebec City, but now I live in Montreal and I'm a video editor mostly. And yeah, that's about it. I'm growing up slowly and finding my path in life, as they say you have to do, right?
Yeah. How are you liking Montreal?
I used to come here for IF3s only. And after 2 days, I was always like super done with the city. And so I can barely believe that I live here now, but I found my way into living a faster life, I guess, than being in the woods all the time. And that's really nice. And I live here with my girlfriend also, so that helps. And all of our friends are working in the video industry and whatnot. And we all live like, I don't know, a few hundred meters away from each other. So it's not like I'm alone here, like moving into a city, being alone, I feel like that would be really harsh, but not the case here.
Because you're really living like center of Montreal. You're in a crowded place.
Yeah, I mean, the neighborhood that we live in is really nice. I like it. It reminds me kind of Charlebourg in Quebec City. It's almost a suburbish area. It's not downtown, which that I think I would hate, but I like it very much.
I wanted to go back through your career with you because I think you have really an interesting story. And plus with your switch to filmmaking, I think there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about in there. Yeah. So let's start from back in the 90s. You grew up in Lac-Beauport, Quebec, which is kind of would you say it's a suburb of Quebec City?
No,
it's too far.
It's a better place than a suburb. Like Beauport is like paradise on earth, and it's the place. It's a mecca of skiing. Like if you think about the Three Fills, and I'll probably miss other names, but the main persons that I look up to back in the day, and I still do, is the Three Fills that are from Lac Beauport, where I come from, where they basically started everything, and so. Coming from there was really inspiring for me at the time, and it still is fun to go back there and see that the same people are still around and working on different projects, but it's a city where a little village where people work together and do some sick stuff.
So from the Three Fills, Phil Bélanger is still involved with Destructure and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. What about the two others? What are they? Do you know what they're doing?
Yeah, Phil. Yes and no. I know that Phil Rose is working on wood. He's a woodworker, and he carves stuffs, and he does really beautiful pieces. And then Phil Dion is a bike coach now, because there's kind of a bike resort in Lac-Beauport, the Sentiers du Moulin, that's becoming really, really cool. And Phil Dion is giving bike classes there in the summer, and I don't know what he does in the winter, but still those people are around who basically started skiing, in my opinion, for freestyle and stuff like that.
There's a couple people that got into biking, it seems. There's also Phil Poirier. Yeah. I think he's a lot into biking in Tremblant.
Yeah. It's always nice when you've loved skiing so much, and you don't have it anymore as much, or that you don't get to the feelings that you used to get, like adrenaline and stuff like that, it's always nice to recycle yourself into something else which gives you kind of that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And with biking, that while we're talking about it, this is what I started doing this summer, and I felt like feelings that I hadn't have in a long time with any sport in general, you know, just the accomplishment or pushing your boundaries, pushing yourself, your limits. So doing something, a lot of people are doing something else than skiing now, but that's, I think, for those reasons where you find yourself doing something you love again.
Yeah, because it's a hard thing to replace. It's not
very hard thing to replace. It's like from being a drug addict to nothing, basically, because you always get your dose of adrenaline and whatnot, and you have something to look forward to and think about. And when you don't have that, it's really it's a little takes a little time to get used to it. But then once you're settled down with something you like, it's so much better.
So you got into road bike this summer?
Yeah. As much as I never thought I would do that, yes.
Yeah, same for me. I got into it and was sure I would hate it, but then you start doing some like 2-hour runs, 3-hour runs, and it's not that bad. It's quite fun.
Yeah, I've never done road bike, and I hopped on it, and like a week later, it was like I had done it all my life in my head, so I'm really glad I found that.
So, Lac Beauport, tell me about young Paul.
We lived really close to Le Relais, which is a really great ski resort in my opinion, because they've always had a really nice park, and that's what we were looking up to, obviously, when we were younger, being from the East Coast. Not as much as looking to ski long downhills and stuff like that. So they've always had a dope park, and we lived right next to it. So I mean, coming back from school, going there for an hour or two and whatnot, it really helps, because that's what we wanted to do at that time, and that's what we got the opportunity to do. And I'm pretty sure that our parents were thankful as well, because my brother and I were kind of tornadoes at that time, so heading to the ski resort was a relief, I think. No, but honestly, like I was a pretty normal kid. I went to school in Lac Beauport as well, which everything was around like where we lived, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, Lac Beauport was great, like I said earlier, and we got to ski a lot. I went to school there, and you know, it's a place where there's a lot of forest, there's a lot of stuff, and my dad is an outdoors man, so that was the perfect place for us to grow up.
And how was the park in Le Relais when you were young? Because we're both the same age,
yeah,
and we grew up in a time where parks were. We grew up in a time when parks were getting bigger and better, but still, I remember on my side when we were really young that, you know, there were still you were still not able to jump in your hill, or you would get your pass pulled and stuff like that. Like when you were young, was there like a park in Le Relais?
When I was younger, this is when the park was the biggest ever. For real? Yeah. They didn't care so much about regulations that back then. And a lot of people like Dum Légaré, Guillaume Saint-Cyr, Phil Warren, a lot of people, I referred to Fred Larue, Advanced Vision, like all this crew was basically around that area as well. And honestly, the parks were super sketchy but big. And then the regulations came in, and then this is where like a lot of stuff got shut down, and no jumps were allowed basically, and the rails, the jump had to be super close to it and whatnot. But yeah, at that time when I was young, it was super big, I recall. And then it got a bit smaller, but then later on I got to travel to go push a bit more, but yeah.
Yeah, there was a time, and I remember going to Tremblant or to Mont-Saint-Anne, and there were these big-ass half-pipes that like that you don't see anymore, but you're like, yeah, there was a hype. I don't know how it got to that point, but like early 2000s where the park were insane. Just
buying the pipe shaper for the groomer, like this was, I don't know how much this shit costs, but just to get that to be like, kids are gonna go into the half pipe, this is a pretty bold move for a ski resort, which is like, now I don't think a mountain would just buy that for fun, but yeah.
I think there's only one half pipe in Quebec now.
Stoneham, is the
Yeah.
if it's not the only one, it's the one that's regulated for World Cups. I don't know what they call it, but for the contest and stuff.
I think it might be the only one.
Yeah, I think so too.
And now it's time for a first sponsor break. Dickens is a family-owned restaurant chain with 12 locations in the Montreal region, and I'm really stoked to have them as a sponsor. If you've never been, you have got to try it out. Their one-of-a-kind hamburgers have been favorites of mine since I was a kid. They've started selling products like their legendary sauce, and they have a lot more coming out soon, so be on the lookout for that. Support companies that support skiing. Support Dickens restaurants. Talking about that era of like investing in half pipes and everything. When we were young, before skiing became cool again, I remember on my side, I was like asking my dad for a snowboard every year. Did you ever get into snowboarding?
No, not so much. For some reason, I don't really understand the mechanics of it. I don't know. I've tried many times, and I figured that I probably can do that, but I truly can't. Like I can go down a hill, but I have no control, and I think this is, I don't know how my mind works for some reason, but I definitely asked my dad once, but my dad is coming from a ski race background, and I was racing too, and my brother raced too, so I feel like once we got into racing, it was not really a question of going to snowboarding at that point. The only thing that when I was racing, the last race of the season, I don't remember the year, but I won twin tip skis. And this is really where it set off my goal to stop. That like the year after, I had completely stopped racing because I won that Dynastar cow skin under the base, and that was the reason why I started.
Was that the troublemaker?
No, it was before that, like the cow skin base. I don't know, people will know. You had the blue ones and you had the red ones. The blue ones were shorter, and those were the one that I won. And I had that, and I was like, dude, now racing is over. And the year after, I just started riding the park and stuff. And even the race coaches, some of them, like I remember that Phil Warren used to coach race, and at this point, those guys were already pretty big. They were super influential to me, at least, because they were skiing at Le Relais, and they were taller, they were older, and they were just ripping the park, but they were coaches as well in the racing thing. So I was inspired, and I was looking like these guys going into the park after the races and whatnot, and I was like, dude, this is exactly what I want to do. That was the fun part.
Yeah. So you won a ski race and you got twin tips.
I didn't even win the ski race. I've never won a ski race in my life. I was pretty bad at it, actually, but the last, like every spring, they were throwing gifts at people and like calling names and picking names out of a hat and stuff, and I won those skis randomly, so super lucky.
And that was the start of it.
Exactly.
Going into park skiing.
Yeah.
Do you know what that age was, approximately?
I'd say I must have been around 12. I don't know.
Okay.
Probably 12 years old.
So 12-year-old Paul gets his first pair of twin tips.
Mm-hmm.
First time I noticed you, I think you must have been 16, 17.
Yeah,
doing edits with your red jacket, and like I remember seeing you and being like really impressed. Like, okay, that guy is really fucking good.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
how did 12-year-old Paul got to the 16-year-old Paul that was, making moves and getting a lot of attention?
The influence that I got, one of the big chances I had too was that I got to meet Phil when I was around 12 too.
Phil Casabon?
Yeah, Phil Casabon. His parents used to travel to different ski areas, and I remember meeting him there at Le Relais at my own ski resort. And then we always foreseen each other like after that, but it's really the influence of everyone around the Lac Beauport and the ski resort. It's like a ski town with people that really pushed into free skiing, and that's what I loved. So I had no reason not to do it. It's like, I don't know, if you grow up nice to a hockey rink where they're 10 pros came out of it. The main goal for the smaller community around it will be to become the best at hockey. You know, it's kind of the same.
Mm. So what was the influence for you? Like, you're talking a lot about the local influence. Was it more that, or like what was it versus ski movies in general, like Level 1, Poor Boys and stuff like that? Were you also influenced by that, or like really the local guys?
Honestly, I've always looked up to ski movies, but to me they seemed kind of dreamish and far to accomplish. I really grew up looking forward to the smaller achievements that led me maybe to go do these things one day, but yeah, I wouldn't say that movies really put me there in the first place. That's not why I started free skiing, although I looked up every ski cassette that could have come out at this time. But like I said, it's like watching a Hollywood movie. It's like, it's almost a stuntman thing at this point, you know, for me. But then as I grow up and the years go on, it develops into something a bit better. But yeah, it becomes really from the smaller goals that leads to something like a bit bigger.
When you're talking about smaller goals, are you talking more about like learning a new trick or going to a competition? Like, what do you mean by smaller goals?
I don't know. Like when I was younger and skiing, I've never pictured myself really. Before, like, I don't know, 18 years old, I didn't really picture myself being at the top. But at some point, I thought I could be there because I was maybe not close to it, but I was in that ballpark of people that are doing contests and whatnot. But I never pictured myself being there earlier on. And even then, like, I like to do urban, and I didn't really like contests. And so it's a weird place to put yourself in. But further on, I looked up to more at Phil, Henrik, and people like that, because I was skiing with them, and that's exactly what I was looking forward to. But
Well, you remind me a lot of ABM, because I'll get to my point. Because when he won his Olympic medal, he was saying a lot that he made it despite not being the best naturally, and like knowing him, I was like, well, bullshit, you're freaking good. But I also got his point of like, okay, he wasn't the next Tom Wallish when he was 13 or 14. He got better each year, and eventually he got to a point where he was one of the best. Yeah. And I think that might be the case for you, because you got to a point where you were in the best in the world, but maybe it was like getting better a year after another, and then at one point you're in the elite.
One thing is to consider, though, too, is that when I was doing contests and stuff like that, the scene was so much different. Like, doubles were pretty new at that point, and then skiing was still, I don't want to diss anybody, but I'd say that skiing used to be a bit more stylish oriented in the contest before that it is now, although I respect so much of what these guys are doing, because now you really have to be an athlete, like, to be on your game. Otherwise, you're not even looking at a single chance to win anything, which to me sounded sad at that time. And that's why I've never taken a contest really too serious. You know, I was stressing out all the time about contests at the top, and that's why I could let my run 100 times the week before on the same course, but on that day, I was like, fuck that, no, I don't want to be here, you know? So I came across a lot of people, too, that helped me in the skiing, which Phil, Henrik, Eric Iberg, that pushed me a lot, Tanner, that helped me. I was with Candy, too, that helped me. A lot of people I came across made me who I am. And if I was to be by myself at that time, of course, I wouldn't have done any, like, not even half of the travels that I got to do and stuff like that. So really, Phil and Henrik picked me under their wings a lot, because I didn't have any money back then either. Like, I was buying my plane ticket to go to Mammoth, for example, and they would take care of the lodging and whatnot. And our season tickets were free. and then the grocery store there, it's pretty cheap. So I was making a nice winter because these guys could literally pay for me, and I was never able to thank them back enough, but I'm sure they know that they helped me a lot.
And now it's time for a second sponsor break. Planks is a British outerwear brand founded in the French Alps. Yeah, you can ski in the UK, but you probably wouldn't. But these guys are still passionate about skiing, and as someone from Quebec, I definitely relate to that. They don't just make high-quality, good-looking gear that's affordable. They care about the free ski culture too, running grassroots events and sporting skiers that are some of my favorites like Woodsy, Lupe Haggerty, and the Real Skiffy crew. Make sure to check them out at planksclothing.com. Support companies that support skiing. Support Planks Clothing. One thing I noticed is that you need that kind of help from mentors, kind of, to help you get somewhere, because if not for them, then who else? Like, I talked to Belmar, and he was telling me that JP was the guy that like hooked him up on Armada, and that I don't know how it got done for Alexi, but basically, he got a paid contract with Solomon really young. So you kind of need those push in the back to help you get going somewhere, because other than that, I don't know how you're supposed to do it.
Very much. I feel like today is so hard to get your your needle out of the haystack. It's a lot. Everyone is good now, and everyone skis, and not everyone skis, and everyone has the opportunities to train. But there's a lot more people than back then. Like, we used to film ourselves on the trampoline with a VHS tape, and like I would do cork 10 on the trampoline, on a round trampoline, would put that clip on New Schoolers, and we'd do like 12,000 views. But back then, that was the normal thing because not everyone had cameras, not everyone would do this type of stuff. So the viewing towards skiing was like much bigger on the viewer side than on the creating side, which now everyone has a phone. And the trend in skiing, which is pretty cool because people like Magnus and I don't know all the names, but the Bunch guys and a lot of crews have became creative and more towards a way that's not affordable but possible for any kid basically, because they ride small stuff, they're super creative about it, but it's that way that's more affordable, I guess, to the public. That's not the word I was looking for. It's a way of hitting urban that is maybe more accessible, like versus a crew hitting something with a winch and jumping off a roof. Well, when they go in a natural in-run and hit a park, then all of a sudden it's something anyone can do and look up to. Yeah, the basic question you asked, though, I came off far once again, but in free skiing, you definitely... Having help back then, I feel like was easier. I'm obviously not in the scene right now, but we used to be around, even as kids, around people that were super influential in this world, which helped us a lot. Like, I feel like being a kid now, I'd be kind of lost because you have to be on a team first of all. There's basically no way unless you spend, I don't know how many, like 40 G's a year to go around the world to try to pit. It's not possible. Whereas for us, we're able to do it for, I don't even know how, but we're able to. Yeah, well, I find it kind of a shame because there's so much talent in Quebec right now from the kids I see, but they're putting so much effort into competitions that even though they're not competing every week, they're like in training camps or in the gym or whatever, and all of that time is taken away from making an edit or developing some kind of brand that they can get themselves known. And then at the end of the year, it's like, well, it's if you win X Games in 2 years, that might be good. But until then, you're kind of unknown. And you're like throwing runs that would win X Games in 2013 maybe. Yeah. And no one knows your name. Like it's a weird state. I'm not sure that all the people that compete in skiing right now have skiing in their heart like someone that does it and doesn't make any money, or it's not about the money too, but some are just athletes and they're trying to perform, and if they don't, they're just gonna quit skiing. And that not everyone, of course, but there's some of that too. I feel you. As if it got to like the classic sports is that way. Like once you get into your teen years, let's say you play football, you're competitive and
if you're not competitive, then you just quit. You don't. There's no there's no in between.
But it used to not be like that so much. But I say that, and I'm sure like a lot of people like to ski. But I just see that more and more as like people are gonna start to retire, and like I don't think you are retiring from skiing ever if you've been a pro and you still ski. And even if you're not relevant, you didn't retire from skiing. You just stopped the competitive side of it. But if you quit it because you saw it as a, something that you had to train so hard for, and you didn't have any results, for some people that's going to turn them down. And I think back then, I don't think there was much of that, because when you were at a certain point, it was on your own will, there were no teams, no nothing. So I really think that switched a bit the mindset of people that are doing it.
Yeah, it seemed way more broad, the scope.
Whereas
now, as you were talking, it's competing. Like I see it as racing athletes. Like you don't do a Super G for fun. So it's really, you only train for Super G, you do your Super G competition, and then comes the notion of retiring. Because, well, I won't be in a skin suit at home.
No.
Or,
And that's true. And I don't know, that's, I was on Oakley back then, and we had a talk one time that was like, when the Olympics came around, obviously there was a switch in the mindsets company towards people that were kind of just going around skiing for fun like I did. And so I was kind of put on well, do you want to are you looking to compete? And my answer at that time was like, yeah, but not really. So, and that was a turning point too in a lot of companies, where when the Olympics came around, it changed lots of things.
It kind of baffles me, the strategy of companies into skiing. Like, I'd be curious to talk to someone on the inside, but a big factor that I saw was ABM, who's a good example for me, because I couldn't ask for more from an athlete if I was like a team manager.
Of course, no.
He's good on social media. He makes movies. He's won X Games. Like, he's medaled at X Games, big air, slope, and real ski. Like, he's all around. And I think the year where he won 3 medals, real ski, big air, and slope in the same year, he also got dropped by Oakley, which is like, well, what do you want from us? Like,
I don't know to what point the industry is going well to. If you look at companies like Armada and stuff like that, I know they were struggling a bit at one point, and they still are the coolest free ski brand to my eye. They have so many people, man. They're the coolest brand, like, and you tell yourself, if that company is struggling to make it into skiing, what more can they do? Like, it's just that we've had bad winters, and that's a reality as well. That winters might not be the best from now on, and they haven't been the best either. So that affects directly. It's like an arrow shooting at skiing. Every time there's a bad winter, it's there's not much you can do about it, and that's when it's hard to get money, when there's no money in the actual sport.
Yeah.
And
one thing I was thinking about recently, I'm curious to have your thoughts on it, is I was wondering, do you think the whole park scene, I don't know how you would call it, the free ski movement, the park scene, if it was a generational thing, as when we were young, I would go, let's say on my part, in the Avila Snow Park, and there were hundreds of kids. And these last few years I went, and it was empty. And, we see a lot of move for brands of like moving, like Salomon went into touring, where it's really not the same demographic. And I see core brands like Armada and Line starting to sell carving skis. Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, like those seem like red flags.
Not red flags. I would say that the money is just more in there, especially in Quebec now. The skin touring is a big thing now, which it never used to be here. And now people are starting to buy fatter skis. They buy skins. They buy bindings to do that. They go back. they go in the woods. There's a lot of places to do it, you know, and this becomes more of a, this is what's profitable for the brands, I think, because the skis that they sell are not $400, and if you buy a full kit, you're in for at least like $1,500, you know. And the people that buy that are also older, which to me seems like a better deal than kids, because they're going to come back to you if they like the sport, of course. But if you gave a good service as a shop, they're going to come back to you. And this is more profitable, I think, and for the industry as well. So, of course, like park skiing, like I said, I haven't been to a ski resort in so long, like, you know, to hang out in the park. But I definitely feel like it's harder to have the goal of pushing if you don't have the signs early on as a kid, because JFO, my good friend, is a coach of the Quebec team, and the kids that are on there, you know, they have the potential, and they're only a few, you know. So if you don't have that, if you're put into the group of I don't know how many they are, but let's say 6 people, and you're the very least good, I feel like this plays on your mind so much. So there's a few people that still are good enough to look forward to, like I said earlier, to the contest scene and winning things, where this is where you're going to get your money.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Access Board Shop is a ski and snowboard shop based out of Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, Canada. They've been in business since 2002 and have supported skiing since day one. From sponsoring numerous athletes to putting on competitions to helping out movie productions, they've done it all. Axis is the core board shop, and they've got everything that you might need this season. Check them out at axisboutique.com or go check out their shop in Saint-Sauveur. Support companies that support skiing. Support Axis Board Shop. Yeah, it almost reminds me of the hockey scene where starting at age 7 or 8, there's already like distinctions of like, are you in the double A or the double B?
That. Yeah, you put the finger on it. This is where it became more of that. But there's always room for, you know, Phil. He's not going to go triple cork on the jump, but he's going to blow your mind on a little rail, you know, because he's so creative. And that's the way I think that kid can still associate themselves with, where they can be creative and they don't have to go on the biggest jump and do the biggest trick. And that's a mentality that was put in for a certain time, I think. But yeah, you in anything, if you're yourself, you're creative, people are gonna notice it. So
yeah, I think Phil is the best case study of being different, of the value of being different, because like you said, he's not looking to do a run with 2 triples, but he's still he's one of the most influential pros out there.
And I would not say that he never second guessed himself, because that's probably not true. But Phil believes in what he does, and that's a huge difference as well. When you start to think about too much of the outside, and that's when you start to swerve a bit out of your way, I feel like. And Phil, also Henrik, you know, like lots of people, man. Like I could name so many. When you stick to your way and you believe in it, that's when it starts to pay off, because being the same dude that's doing the same run as 50 people, to me, is not what I'm looking for in the skiing at all.
When we branched off, we were talking about you getting better and being influenced by the local guys at your resort.
Yeah.
How did your first sponsor come about?
So my first sponsor was because Phil Warren was friend of Matt Melanson, and Phil Warren was seeing me skiing around town a lot. And so one time I met Matt Melanson. This is where my first sponsor came in. That was Oakley. And then he gave me 2 suits. At the time, I was incredibly stoked. And Oakley was like, you know, Tanner, Unolson, everyone was on Oakley back then. So to me, that was the greatest brand to be on. And after that, I got on Salomon. I don't recall why, but I got a deal with Salomon. When I say a deal, is few pairs of skis, of course, but a couple years later, Salomon is the sponsor that helped me the most because they were flying us out to when they used to have 3 tours. They used to fly us out everywhere and take care of the lodging, and like the whole team was together. There was a tech there for skis and stuff like that. So yeah, they really helped me a lot there.
There was a time around 2008, 2009 where you really got people's attention. You were filming with local companies like NSF and ESK in Quebec. You made the super unknown finalists at, you know, maybe an era where it meant more. Like it was right after Tom Wallish, and the guys that were in the finalists were guys that people needed to keep an eye out for. Like it was an era where you were in the finalists maybe with like Nick Martini, Clayton Villa, and people like that. What was your mindset at that time? Being a super unknown finalist definitely gives you a hint that you're going in the right direction.
I never tried to copy so much anyone, so I think I've been influenced a lot by a lot of people, but I think I've always tried to do my own thing, even though it was maybe not the best thing to do at some point, but I've always believed in the tricks I was doing and the things that I put up on the internet. So it's hard for me to say that I had a mindset at that time other than skiing. And that's the best part about skiing. When you get into the mindset when there's nothing else in the world but skiing. I think that's what I was at that point, because I was probably 17, 18 years old, probably. So yeah, that's the only thing that was going on.
You were putting out a lot of content. With the content is really a 2020 word, but segment with multiple companies, doing a lot of edits.
Yeah, but once again, it was that era, you know, like that's the content, the shots that you'd put out were not much easier, I'd say, but now the line is drawn where it has to be pretty epic. If you put something, you know what I mean? Like, if you're a good skier, you almost can't afford to put out something that's average, because internet, first of all, can make or break anyone basically nowadays, you know, like if the comment sections and whatnot, like, not that you have to care about it, but like you really have to be on your game more than back then, I feel like, because we would film on normal jumps in normal parks that would have these jumps every year, and now that's not, unless you commit to that view of like we ride park. But for a movie, I don't know, if you have backcountry thrown in there and then you have the guy that does a smaller jump, I don't know if it fits the thing better, where it used to work great, I think.
Yeah, well, there was the whole point of social media not being there. So yeah, either your edit was on Newschoolers or you were putting out a movie. So there was a rarity, and when your stuff came out, there was something special. Whereas now, there was this real question of, if you put a quality edit, it might get a couple thousand views. But for most of these guys, it's less than what they would get on an Instagram post. So,
and it might be a bit far off, but I used to coach is a big word, but I used to be at the water ramp sometimes in the summer, and like kids would be like, oh, can you film this? And then that kid would post the video on his Facebook. And because the kids now are basically born with a phone in their hands and with Facebook, Instagram, whatever, these kids, when they post a video, they have like 400 likes on their video. And that comes from their little bubble of the high school thing. And when I post like a photo of myself, it might get like 15 likes nowadays, you know? And so kids are they're looking forward to this so much. And that brings me back again. The films that used to be made back then is because a few people had cameras. A few people were able to make a film, edit, put music in it. And so that's the main thing, is that now making a video is mainstreamed. It's so easy. It can be made automatic if you want. You don't have to touch like, it's so much different than it used to be. And I think that's the main thing that changed, is that people now have access to creating lots of content.
I think that's maybe something that's hard for people that want to get their name out there right now, is that it seems to me that it's more, the attention is spread out between, I don't know, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, New Schoolers. Whereas maybe when we were young, everyone was on New Schoolers because there wasn't anything else. At some point, Facebook came in, but everyone was on New Schoolers. Now it's like, well, how do I get attention? Everyone is spread out on.
And you have to be with the right people. I don't even know how people do it, man. Honestly, you have to be so good, in my opinion, in skiing right now to get attention in a way because you have to blow people's mind off. That's exactly what's to be done if you want to stick out. I mean, it must be so hard, man. And I have much respect for people that are older and still so relevant in skiing because they have their own place and they understand everything that's about it, and they're OGs too. So that makes them, the best persons to be up there. And when I say that because, like, Tanner Houle, man, he's been around for so long and is still relevant to kids. And for me, it's most important to be relevant to kids because they're the future. So if you can be in their minds at that age, you won skiing for sure. Like Phil too, man. It's such a... Kids are looking up to Phil so much, and that's great to see. And not the most beautiful part of that is that it's locally as well. If you go to the ski resort there, he skis there with every kid. And like I saw him last week or 2 weeks ago, he went to hit the classic rail in the park at Grand-Mère, I think this is, like with some kids that was there, and how many kids can say that their favorite rider that comes from their city rides with them on early season? I mean, this is how you stick into people's head, and that's the spirit.
Yeah, and that's his biggest strength, I think. And it's not like as if it was planned. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
You're talking about Tanner being relevant. I think a big thing that changes as you get older is that you get more conscious of your body and health. What were your thoughts when you saw his urban shots of like him doing a double backflip over a urban feature at 37?
Yeah, I hung out with Tanner a fair bit, so I can safely say that skiing is his life. That's 100% of his life, and he's never gonna quit it. And there's a few people like that where the mind is towards skiing. When I say that, I think about Henrik as well. It almost seems like there's not much going around the bubble of skiing. I'm sure there is, man. I'm not in their minds, but that's one thing that I never had, is that focus towards, because even back then, like not having enough money to travel to somewhere, that's a stress that throws you off a bit. There's always that money part to me that kind of bugged me off a bit because, I don't know, when you don't, you have to struggle to get to some place, and then you have to kind of beg your friend, not beg, but to get paid for to stay at some spot because you don't have the money. It's not the best mindset to me, and that kind of threw me off.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Treefort Lifestyles is a company based out of Oregon. They've been involved in the ski industry since their inception in 2011 when they made their first pair of suspenders for skiing. They produce some of the nicest accessories you can find out there for your adventure activities, whether you're going skiing, hiking, or traveling. I've worn their suspenders all winter, and I have to say I love them. They're stylish, and they're so comfortable you forget you have them on in the first place. Go check them out at treefortlifestyles.com and use code MERAN at checkout to get 15% off your order. Support companies that support skiing. Support Treefort Lifestyles. It surely helps, talking about Tanner or Henrik, when they've had a lot of success young, which definitely helps in terms of in the pockets. There's that. It takes off a lot of stress off your mind. Talking about Tanner definitely made a lot of money in his 20s. So right now, I don't think he must not be stressed about it.
I don't know, but any athletes, if they don't have the focus in the right place, it's really hard, especially now. But I don't know. I'd say that I've always been passionate about skiing, but not as much as some dudes, I'd say. Like, because I don't ski anymore now, and it doesn't bother me so much. Whereas for some people, I'm sure, man, it's not even an option. Skiing is in their mind all the time. But I've been passionate about skiing, and I still am. But my life took a different path, and that kind of shows you how my mind's... I think it reflects on how I thought back then, because it's... that tells me that skiing wasn't 100% of what I thought back then. If I'm at this point now, I feel like maybe it's my passion, but it wasn't 100% where I could just think about that. So, I don't know. Anyhow.
Another person that you talked about that is still relevant is Phil. And when you say like he's riding with kids and everything, one thing that comes to mind, like kind of doing an update of, okay, we're not kids anymore, is that when we were younger, it seemed like someone who's 32 is really old.
Yeah.
And now I would look at a video from Phil this year, and he's like still on top of his game. Yeah.
Because Phil is the person that mentally is the strongest that I know, I think. He's a really special person in the way where, his ideas are always thought through, like when he says something, it's really flat where he thought about it, and he puts the baseline down as where if he says something, that's what he thinks, I have a lot of... I've always looked up to Phil meant for a mental like way to resonate with life, because I've always been kind of someone that's super stiff on the ideas and like super quick to respond to, like if someone tells me shut up, I'll reply shut up like half a second later, like that's the kind of person I am. But Phil taught me to think things through, and to take a moment to realize what's happening, to have an outside idea about it. Phil is super, in his mind, in his head, and that's to me that's so inspiring, because he's a sage, like we say in French. I don't know, you say that in English, but almost a
wise man.
He is a wise man for real. Yeah. And we've talked about Phil quite some bit, but Phil is definitely the person that influenced me the most, and in the life perspective, skiing as well, but life perspective, how to think about things and stuff like that.
One thing that I didn't know when talking to Phil this fall, he told me that when he had a clear plan of starting the BNE, and in his mind at the beginning, it was just a matter of finding his partner in that. And that in the beginning, he said that he thought he was going to do it with you.
Yeah. Honestly, good for him that he went with Henrik, because of course it was a better plan. I really appreciate the fact that he said that though, because we started doing a few videos back in Quebec, and those videos worked well.
Yeah, you had a point where you were doing a bunch of, I think maybe 2009, like you have an infamous shot at a competition in Tremblant where it was like teams of skiers and snowboarders, and you were doing a run all at the same time.
Two snowboarders, two skiers.
Yeah, you're doing like the setup. It's like a big air kind of competitions. There were only two setups, but you're going at the same time, and you and Phil both do a
switch 10 mute.
A switch 10 mute, but like synchronized.
Yeah.
Synchronized to the fullest, and it's a legendary shot.
Yeah, thanks for recalling that. That's nice. But yeah, that shot, when you look at it frame by frame, we land on the exact same frame. So with that, but yeah, that Tremblant thing was crazy.
That was a cool concept.
Very cool. And I'm so appreciative that Phil always included me in his projects and whatnot, and also Henrik, because they didn't have to at all, and I'm so appreciative. But like that Tremblant, this is where we started filming more and doing more stuff together, Phil and I. And then Henrik was already blown off in Europe. Like he'd been for a while at this point. Like I think he went to Houle Invitational at 12 or 13, I think. for the first time. That was in his hometown. So after, like, Henrik was there too, and of course Henrik was better. There was no doubts about that. And I don't think that was in Phil's choice because I don't think Phil thought that he'd choose Henrik because he was better. It's just that's how it happened, and I feel like I was just not in that spot really, and just happened like that, and it's great. We did a few edits together. It was nice, and then after I got to catch up with Phil and Henrik together, so it's no no hard feelings whatsoever at all.
Yeah, in your early career, let's say, like pre-2010, you were really influential. Like, when you say you were filming with Phil, it seemed like every edit you would do, you would get a lot of hype. And it's something that not everyone has. Like, some skiers are really good, but they never really get the hype towards them. It seemed like you would drop a 1-minute edit with Phil, and it was like the new, like, coolest edit, but it seemed like you probably did 3 runs, but you really had something special going.
Yeah, but again, like, if I would have been to put out this edit by myself, it would have never made as close to what it made. Like, Phil really took me under his wing, and that's what happened my entire career. Yes, I did some things that were more focused on what I could do, but I was really most often under the wing of someone, which is fine to me, man, because it led me to do all these things. But I never had that particular talent that was like sticking out, you know.
But you know what? I disagree.
Like, I did a few things, man, but
your most influential videos are all with someone, but I would never say that you're the one who's like not. You're this like the.
Early on, I agree with you for all early. I agree with you for early on, but what made me the most was when I moved out. Well, moving. I went to Breck and Keystone. I was there for about two full seasons. Even the spring, we'd leave from Breck. We'd drive out to Mammoth and stuff like that. When I started to go to the U.S. a lot, that's when it started to pop up more, because some people even thought I was an American at some point, and I think, it's sad to say, but that helps, you know, because this is where it's at, kind of.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. J Skis is a company based out of Burlington, Vermont. Their business model of making limited edition graphic skis that are sold online directly to consumer is super dope. As a fan of original graphics, I love it. They put a lot of effort into making great skis, but also in making them look super good. I finally had the chance to try out my vacation skis this spring, and I gotta say, I love them. They were so playful that after shooting a jump, I had to go in front of the lens and hit it myself. Knowing how much time and effort Jason Leventhal and his team put into each ski they produce, I'm really looking forward to their upcoming releases. Support companies that support skiing. Support J Skis. Well, it seems like you need to export yourself to make it out.
And this is when it started. The first time I went to Breckenridge, I was like, there's no way in hell that you can be good at slopestyle if you stay in like Beauport, man. Mm-hmm. In Quebec in general. Like, even going to BC, Whistler is not the place to train for slopestyle, I don't think, you know. So I came out, I was in Breckenridge, and then I went to Keystone, and I was blown away, and I came back for a few years after that, like straight back to back. And this is when I started to find myself more, you know, because I could ride the best park every day. So that's where I really started to find myself, because staying in Quebec was kind of hard in my mind, seeing what was going on out there.
Yeah, we'll get to talk to that. I want to get your thoughts on your brother making a name for himself, but mostly staying in Quebec, because that's a feat in itself. But yeah, when I think about the influential videos that you put out, there's your stepped part with Parker White, which when we look back at it, it's not as if you spent your whole season filming for it. Like,
no, not
but
at all.
It was really influential. There's your edit with Clayton Villa and Breck. That was really influential. There's your King of Style video. That's the thing that I wanted to talk to you about. You'd been making waves for a while in 2007, 8, 9. And then I think a pinnacle for you kind of was 2010. There's the Sammy Carlson Invitational.
Yeah.
When that's the time when he did the first triple. You go there. From what I remember, you were like impressing everyone. Like,
yeah,
you were
that was
guy.
the main. That was the highest peak, I'd say.
Yeah, and did you win like MVP or something like that? Like did you win an award there?
There weren't any prizes, but that's when I got the. I remember TJ coming up and he's like, "What you did was fucked up," and I was like, "Oh yeah, if this guy says that, I think it's true." And a few people told me that like they were impressed with what I did that day, but honestly, like
it was kind of a humongous jump, like
yeah,
really
super big. Lots of people.
And I still
crashed.
remember it. Like you did kind of a switch double wobble 14.
Yeah,
grabbed all the way, stomped.
Yeah, a few tricks there.
When you see that kind of trick and stump like that on a huge jump like that.
It didn't go well for everyone, you know. I think I was just in my full zone there. But we were in Whistler the week. We drove from Whistler to go there.
Mm.
And I remember seeing the first videos of Sammy hitting the jump. And I didn't sleep for like... I must have slept for 2-3 hours a night. But I didn't sleep for 3 days. And I felt super anxious because that jump was so big. And that was my first time hitting something that was that big. But I felt really, really good about it. Like pretty soon after doing the first try, I felt awesome about the jump. And we spent a few days, and it was we were over the clouds the whole time. There was like this ocean of clouds that was just breaking off on our left, that on a roll angle kind of, and you could see the sun on the looking west. It was insane. The entire time was a dream. But that's truly when was my peak, I think, because I even outdid myself in a way where I was shooting for the stars, and I landed some tricks that maybe were luck, but you know, it was a great time.
But I'm curious to have your thoughts on that, because you're saying that you were anxious about that jump.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of surprises me because we were filming together in Whistler right before that, and the jump in momentum was kind of pretty big. And I remember you were throwing all sorts of dubs. Like I think that was maybe a big learning sessions for you.
Yeah,
you were throwing some dub 10, some switch dubs. So I would have thought that going in there, you would have been like hyped to like try them on a bigger jump.
Yeah, we came from Whistler where the jump was enormous, but incredibly poppy, more like a tabletop or almost a step up. So that felt maybe safer. The other jump was really, really long and step downish kind of, not step down fully, but it was a scary jump to do. And especially being around the people that were there. Like, who am I really to be? I'm happy that Sammy picked me because there were, I don't know how many people, 20 people I think were there. I'm not sure. But
intimidating.
Well, I just felt so lucky to be there. And even like, why am I here? Kind of, there's so many other people that could have been there. But man, that was the greatest experience of my life for sure. Lots of things that we done there.
We didn't see a lot of shots come out of that show. It seems like it was really the standout that I have in mind is Sammy's triple and your switch dub 14.
I think there was a few edits that came out, but honestly, lots of people stopped or hurt themselves. What I recall, like the helicopter was flying around and Sammy was at the top. Parker White and I took the sled up, and Sammy was at the top, and he was like, I'm not sure I want to do this, guys. And the helicopter dude was, from what I recall, was like, oh, we got to go now. And he's like, all right, hold on. And we're like, yo, you got it, dude. And he sent it, and he landed it, and that was the end of the session. Like, Parker and I didn't even hit the jump. We just rode by. Everyone jumped in Sammy's arms, and it was like the craziest shit. And the helicopter rolled out right away, man. It was meant to happen.
Damn.
Yeah.
Dream. Yeah, I remember when it dropped, kind of blew off the internet for a while. He dropped it like a couple of days later only with like was it Dr. Dre Snoop Dogg song?
Yeah, I don't recall the single shot, but yeah.
It was like
I think the shot was filmed from the left side of the jump that day. I don't remember fully what happened, but man, a crazy time for sure. And once again, thank you, Sammy, for inviting me at that point.
Yeah, Sammy is another guy. When we talk about Phil and Tanner still being relevant, Sammy has had a crazy career because his first appearances were in 2006, maybe 2005 in Poor Boys movies, something like that.
I'd say he's probably 30, 31 years old, not even.
Yeah, maybe Phil's age.
Yeah.
So, and he's still he branched off to Big Mountain and had quite some success. Like he won X Games 3 years in a row, and he's still killing it.
Yeah. But those are the guys too. Sammy has always had his style. Has always been Sammy, and had the chance to be he's the best. He's always been amongst the best either too. So I don't know. It's certain persons that are so unique that it's not even a question of like, do I like? No, it's this guy's a legend. So yeah.
He always had a really unique style, like a certain aggressive-ness in his skiing.
Yeah, snappy.
Yeah.
Like
I remember him in a slopestyle course. It seems like he was like kind of racing the course.
Yeah.
Like carving to one jump to another, his pokes and his grab
But
there's something unique about him.
Yeah, and there's too many skiers that are the same nowadays, and that's the true spirit of skiing, is to put your softness and how you do it into it. And it's too easy to be stiff, and it's easy to do a trick that's not looking great in my eye because there's no flavor into it. But if you put a little flavor that's yourself, even some people seem sketchy sometimes, even like, when they do certain tricks, but I like it because that's how they do things. It's a different type of stuff. In skateboarding, it's kind of like that too. There's people that have so many different styles. So in any sport, really, I'm sure wingsuit flyer recognize themselves as like, oh, this guy is like has a different style, and anything in life.
So this is it for episode 12. Thanks a lot for listening. Big shout out to this episode's sponsor, Axis Board Shop, Planks Clothing, J Skis, Treefort Lifestyles, and Dick Ann's Restaurant. Peace.